My grandmother just turned 100 years old, and my father threw her into the river for fish to feed on. In this old village, whenever someone turns 100 years old, they turn into a demon and feed on their own family members for vitality. To protect themselves, villagers are forced to drown their centenarian family members. My father, a hardened veteran of countless online shooter games, knew the legend was not just folklore. He'd seen the horrific aftermath in our village, families decimated, homes left eerily silent. Grandma becoming the mother, as the villagers whispered, was not an option. 2 hours remained until midnight, the witching hour, and tensions ran high. My uncle, ever the optimist, pleaded with my father, arguing against the horrific ritual. My mother, torn between love and survival, could only watch as a bitter argument erupted between the brothers. Ultimately, fear won. My father, determined to protect us, secured Grandma outside, binding her with rope. My uncle, his face a mask of anger and heartbreak, lashed out, accusing us of being heartless and disrespectful. My mother tried to pull him away, but his rage was uncontrollable. "It's now or never," my father yelled, his voice tight with urgency. "If we wait past midnight, she transforms, and none of us will survive. We'll all be eaten alive." Grandma, tears streaming down her wrinkled face, reached for my father's hand. "Please, son, don't do this," she sobbed. "I won't become a monster. I won't hurt anyone, least of all my own flesh and blood." Her words, laced with fear and love, seemed to soften my father's resolve. "All right," he relented, but his voice remained heavy with doubt. "We won't drown her, but we won't sleep tonight either. We'll keep watch until dawn. If she turns, if I have to bear the weight of disrespect, I will do it to protect my family." My mother and uncle, both pale and visibly shaken, nodded in silent agreement. We huddled around Grandma, the fire a small beacon of warmth in the growing darkness. The night dragged on. I couldn't help but remember the story my mother told me, the one about my older sister, who mysteriously disappeared when she was only 16. The memory fueled my father's determination to protect me. With each tick of the clock, my anxiety escalated. 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10. Time seemed to stretch into an agonizing eternity. Then, right as the village clock chimed the midnight hour, Grandma let out a ragged cough, her frail body trembling. My father sprang up, grabbing a knife and a burning log from the fire. We all scrambled back, fear gripping our hearts. I hid behind my father, my eyes darting between him and my convulsing grandma. But then, just as abruptly as it started, the coughing ceased. The tremor subsided. "I'm all right," she whispered, her voice hoarse but steady. "Just a coughing fit. Don't be scared." My uncle, his relief palpable, stepped forward. "See?" He beamed at my father. The stroke of midnight came and went. "She's fine." Relief washed over us, replacing the icy dread. It appeared the legend was nothing more than a scary story to keep children in line. Or was it? My mother helped Grandma to her feet. "You survived the century mark, Mother," she chuckled. "Now, what will the birthday girl have to eat?" "I'll make you anything you desire. Just a bowl of good, old-fashioned chicken soup would hit the spot," Grandma said, a genuine smile returning to her wrinkled face. Neither our family nor my uncle's had any chickens, so a hunting expedition was swiftly planned. With promises of a hearty meal, we set off into the nearby woods, leaving Grandma behind. As we walked, I couldn't shake off a feeling of uneasiness. Just as we reached the tree line, I glanced back at the house. In that brief moment, I saw it, Grandma's elongated shadow in the window, sitting upright, alert. My blood ran cold. Had she been faking it this whole time? "What's wrong, son?" my father asked, concern etched on his face. I shook my head, unsure of what I had seen, my mind playing tricks. "It's nothing, father." I forced a smile, pushing the terrifying image from my mind, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of impending doom. Halfway into the forest, my uncle remembered he'd forgotten the essential pegs for his hunting net, asking me to return to the village and fetch them. The fear that had been a faint whisper in my mind roared back to life. Returning to the empty house, knowing what I thought I'd seen, it felt like walking into the jaws of a beast. But my uncle's insistence wore me down. With each step back to the village, my heartbeat echoed in my ears. Standing in the courtyard, I called out for Grandma, hoping, praying for a response, a sign that everything was all right. Silence. It stretched out, thick and heavy. Taking a deep breath, I slowly pushed open the door. The flickering lamplight cast dancing shadows that only amplified my terror. Everything seemed off. Grandma was not in her usual spot on the bed. As I turned to leave, clutching the forgotten pegs, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. Panic flooded my senses, and I dropped to my knees, fear erupting from me in a torrent of pleas. "Grandma, it's me, your grandson, the one you raised. I swear I'll honor your memory always. We can travel the world, taste the finest foods. Just please don't eat me. I'm all skin and bones. I wouldn't even make a decent snack." Silence. I slowly turned, my heart hammering against my ribs. The room was empty. Shaking off the dread that threatened to engulf me, I returned to the forest, staying glued to my uncle's side. It felt as if unseen eyes watched my every move, each rustle of leaves sounding like approaching footsteps. Suddenly, a series of blood-curdling screams sliced through the silence, followed by an agonizing cry of pain. My heart lurched. It was my father. Dropping the hunting net, my uncle and I sprinted toward the source of the commotion. My legs burned, but the image of my father, injured or worse, fueled my every stride. Then, I saw it, a scene of unimaginable horror. My father lay crumpled on the ground, his clothes torn, a pool of blood staining the earth crimson. One of his arms was completely gone, on, the raw stump a testament to unimaginable violence. His face was ashen, beaded with sweat, his breaths shallow gasps of agony. My uncle rushed to his side, his face ashen. What happened? What attacked you? My father, his voice a pained rasp, managed a few choked words. Something lurked in the undergrowth. I thought it was an animal. Then, teeth. It sank its teeth into me, ripped my arm clean off. Examining the gruesome scene, I noticed a flash of white against the bloody mess, partially hidden by the foliage. Curiosity overriding fear, I leaned closer, my heart skipping a beat as my fingers closed around a small, white jade pendant, Grandma's pendant. A cold, terrifying realization gripped me. It was no animal that had attacked my father. Just as I was about to show the jade pendant, my grandma's voice, sickeningly sweet, pierced through the trees. Children, she cooed, it's time to go home. Turning, I came face to face with her, bathed in moonlight. There was a strange lilt to her gait, an unnatural fluidity that sent shivers down my spine. She was no longer the frail, elderly woman we'd left in the village. Terror rendered me speechless. I slipped the jade pendant into my pocket, concealing it from view. Seeing my father's condition, Grandma burst into theatrical sobs. My poor son, she cried, her voice laced with false concern. It's all my fault. If only I hadn't wished for that chicken soup. Despite the horror clawing at the edges of my sanity, I kept silent, observing. It was like watching a macabre play unfold, one where I knew the tragic ending. Days morphed into an agonizing blur as my father's mangled body lay in state. My mother wept inconsolably, clinging to the remnants of her shattered sanity. My uncle moved like a ghost, his grief-stricken silence speaking volumes. And my grandma, she played the role of the grieving widow to chilling perfection. But I knew the truth. A monster lurked beneath her frail facade, disguised by a stolen face. Then, as if to confirm my suspicions, the inevitable occurred. Armed with age-old superstition, the village elder and a solemn priest barged into our home, their eyes fixed on my grandmother with unsettling conviction. A shape-shifting demon, the priest's voice boomed, shattering the tense quiet of mourning. This is the creature's doing. Before any of us could react, villagers swarmed my grandmother, binding her with rough ropes. Her facade of innocence crumbled as she thrashed against them, a guttural growl escaping her throat. My uncle fought back, desperately trying to protect his mother, but his efforts were futile against the mob's zealous determination. Please, you have it wrong, he pleaded, his words drowned out by the chaotic frenzy. My mother's eyes met mine, a mixture of confusion and burgeoning fear twisting her features. But I had no answers, only a growing sense of despair. They were dragging Grandma to the village square, preparing for a public exorcism. She was going to be burned alive, consumed by flames, just as surely as she had consumed my father. But even amidst the turmoil, a question gnawed at me. Why? Why go through the motions of grief, the elaborate charade? Unless she wanted to be caught, to make a spectacle of her wickedness, savoring our terror one last time. They took her away, leaving us in the suffocating silence of our now empty home, the scent of wood smoke a bitter reminder of our village's macabre ritual. And as the flames consumed the pyre, casting an eerie glow on the faces of the villagers, I couldn't help but wonder, was this truly the end, or just the beginning of a new nightmare? The monster may have been silenced, but the terror lived on.